Welcome back. Still on the signature morning. The Syrian conflict has entered a dramatic new phase as rebel forces led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham recently captured several cities, including Hama and Homs, in a surprise offensive. This marks a significant shift, with rebels regaining territories they lost years ago. Following intense clashes, pro-government forces retreated from these cities, reportedly to pressure civilian lives. The situation escalated as Russian-backed airstrikes targeted rebel-controlled areas, causing widespread destruction and casualties. Meanwhile, international actors, including Iran and Hezbollah, have begun withdrawing personnel, signaling possible shifts in regional alliances. The rebels' victories sever critical supply lines to Syria's west coast, putting further strain on President Assad's forces. This latest development raises pressing questions about the future of Syria's civil war, the impact on civilians, and the broader geopolitical implications. So join us as we explore the complexities of this evolving crisis with our expert guest, Raymond Mbata, International Affairs Analyst. Good to have you, Mr. Mbata.
It's a pleasure being on your program.
How are you doing this morning? Good to have you.
Very good. Thank you for having me on your program.
All right. We've seen what is happening in Syria. Rebel forces have recently captured some cities, creating significant, shift in control. My question is, how does this fall of key cities like Hama and Homs mean for Syria's stability and governance?
First of all, I want to congratulate the Syrian people for having a breakthrough through their decades-long civil war. It has been a very ravaging time for the Syrian population. I want to commiserate with those who have lost their loved ones and say that this is the beginning for a new dawn for Syria, if well managed. The rebel forces started taking over from the 27th of November and started inching towards Homs, inching towards Aleppo, and also towards the capital, Damascus. And they say that it was in retaliation for government forces invading and attacking them with airstrikes assisted by Russia. And so the counterattack has provided a leeway for the rebel forces to take complete control over Homs, over Hama, and over the capital, Damascus, also with less casualties on their side. It's a big victory, and it's a signal for a new dawn for the Syrian population. There has been celebrations all around in Syria, in Turkey, also in Lebanon, and in some other Middle Eastern countries. They have been celebrating the fall of the Assad regime in Syria as of now.
Right. We understand this started in 2011. This is over a decade ago, and that was during the Arab Spring. Russia at that time and other countries helped Assad to win. Why do you think Russia was unable to help Assad at least stay longer, with what's going on in the Middle East?
Russia has their hand full already with the conflict in Ukraine, which is a byproduct of also the ongoing Cold War. For me, I think the Cold War did not end. The Cold War was only stored in the freezer for further conflicts to arouse out of it. Russia is still competing with the United States to be the policeman of the world. And also that also showed its hand in the conflict in Ukraine. There was no real reason for Russia to attack Ukraine, apart from the fact that Ukraine might be a member of the NATO formation, and that will be a threat to Russia. And so Russia has the hands full in trying to contain the Ukrainian situation and would not have been able to give as much as arms and personnel support to Arab countries to counter the effect of Israeli, United States, Western Europe coalition in the Middle Eastern region. So I think Russia has its hands full. Russia can only appeal to China or even North Korea to assist the the Arabian Peninsula in a vice that they have been enclosed in a vice fought by proxy by the likes of Iran using Hezbollah in the territories of Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon to fight against the independence and the status of the state of Israel. So I think that first of all, it's going to signify that it's a drop in the manpower and the capabilities of Russia to be able to assist its allies in the Middle East era. And I think it will be an ascendancy of the American, Middle East, America, Western Europe alliance with Israel will supersede.
Right. If you see the speed at which this takeover happened, I mean, it started in November 27th. Today is 7th of December. I mean, between November 27th and 7th of December, today is 9th. I mean, you would think that these guys must have for some foreign backing. Do you think that some way Israel or the United States, you know, were the ones supporting these rebels to topple Assad?
Definitely, the Israeli Prime Minister has made a press briefing and attributing the fall of the Assad regime to the assistance gotten from the Israeli Defense Forces with the support of the Syrian people. There was also non-communication of these actions, series of actions, to Western Europe and also to United States of America. Seemingly being taken unawares per se. I know they cannot be really taken unawares, but for official purposes, they were not informed of this counterattack that brought about the victory and the exile of al-Assad to Moscow. As at present, Moscow has confirmed that al-Assad is in Moscow right now. So it's also coincides with how the United States took the fall of Haniyeh in Tehran, in Iran, and also the death of Nasrallah in Lebanon. Also, they were taken by shock, they were taken by surprise, but we do know that they don't want to endorse these killings because the Middle East is a very, very fragile region. So even if they support these exterminations per se, but they will not want to come out per se in bold terms to say that we support the fall of the Assad regime, even if that is what they tactically support. And also, don't forget that the rebel groups that led the total liberation of the capital are also linked to the Al-Qaeda. Also, there are elements of the Al-Qaeda and ISIS also with the rebel-led coalition. And also, there are the Kurdistan, the Kurdish groups that wants their independence, also assisted also by some other foreign nationals like the United States of America as a bulwark against the ISIS in case ISIS begins to metamorphose into another killing rampage that they were represented as before. But for now, presently, there is peace and calm and general acceptance of the fact that Bashar al-Assad and his father's regime of more than 50 years has come to an end, and a new chapter in Syrian politics has started. And also, it also signifies the fall of Iran's geopolitical terrain and the whole plan that Iran has concerning the Middle Eastern crisis and their contributions towards the escalation of this crisis with Israel. Israel has been able to use a back channel to be able to avoid the ascendancy of Iran as a superpower in the Middle Eastern region per se.
Right. Civilians in conflict zones face displacement, lack of aid, and even violence. And we know that renewed fighting may drive more Syrians to flee, putting additional pressure on nations like Turkey and Lebanon. But my question is, what are the potential consequences of neighboring countries, particularly regarding refugees and border security? And how can international organizations, come into this particular menace that's happening in this country right now?
Okay, the issue of humanitarian crisis in Syria has already been long overdue to be addressed because the civil war had caused a very, very great dispersion of the diaspora into Central Europe, into even Western Europe, with some countries in Western Europe granting Syrian citizenship for Syrian refugees, particularly even before the Ukrainian war set in. And it has been a very, very big crisis, one of the biggest humanitarian crisis right now, presently. And it's going to be exacerbated until, I mean, there's going to be unrest until there'll be order to be set in place by the governing council, which we have not for now understood who will be the leader of the government, or who will take Syria from this present state of anarchy to a place where they can get more for their government. And I see, first of all, that the issue concerning humanitarian crisis, Israel is not going to allow the borders to be open for them to receive any refugees, definitely. But Israel has decided to go with a good neighbor policy to send in medical aid, and also to be able to provide as much as security that they can provide from the buffer zone in the Golan Heights for the Syrian refugees. Anybody that is close to the Golan Heights in Syria that has been occupied by Israel as a buffer zone against Hezbollah terrorism will be taken care of. And also the government of Turkey has the highest population of Syrian refugees, and definitely these are times when the good neighbor will be needed also. And I think the population will increase of refugees moving up to Turkey, moving up to Iraq, and because Lebanon is already in crisis, I don't see much of them going back to Lebanon, because most of this population are dispersed by they are living in places where Hezbollah operates actively against the state of Israel, and Israel has made it a duty to make sure they flush out these areas. And with this problem in Syria, more people will want to come towards the border area with Israel, but Israel is not going to allow that border to be opened. And as well, they will just provide more aid. And that's where the United Nations steps in, and also Western Europe, to ease the burden of the ensuring humanitarian crisis that is going to arise in Syria in the coming days. It's something that they have to be proactive about and go into it head on, and provide food and sanitary services for the people of Syria, pending when the government of the day will be announced and begin the work which they have been elected by the people to do.
Right. Do you see the rebel really sticking to what they have announced? They've announced an 18-month transition period, and so many persons don't really think that they're going to keep to it. I mean, reminiscent of what we've seen in other, parts of the world. We'll see that play out in Libya. We've seen that play out in other parts. I'm just wondering, do you think they're going to stick to this plan of an 18-month transition period with the Prime Minister holding sway?
I think the biggest decider of what happens in Syria right now, if you want to really play geopolitical power politics, is the state of Israel. If the present regime in Damascus is going to be a threat to the existence and the people of Israel, it is not going to be business as usual, because Israel will not rest until anybody that is proving himself to be a threat to the people of Israel will be either eliminated or sent as far away from the people of Israel as possible. And with that in mind, I think that the United States is going to pressure for a national government including the Kurdish fighters, including ISIS, including remnants of Al-Qaeda, which we are the Al-Sham that led the arrowhead of this attack against Al-Assad, and also some other minorities in Syria, to make sure that it is a representative government, not a government of just a faction of the opposition fighters. The opposition worked as a team to make sure that Al-Assad was taken out of government, and I am very sure that no one opposition party, no one freedom fighting party will take full control. They will share power until elections are being given. But be that as it may, the elections, if they said it's going to take a year plus for the elections to start, there are processes that are going to be in place even before the elections are being put in place. Like political parties have to start their campaigns. Political parties can start operations, and they should be unbarred if they have been barred. Freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedoms that are necessary for community life, for communal life to begin afresh again. So I think that it's not going to last that long for a concrete government to be visible, because it's for now it's like a ragtag Al Qaeda kind of Afghanistan kind of formation that they have in place for now, which is not sustainable.
All right. What can Africa learn, really? I mean, we saw how it all started. Arab Spring, the civilians asked for reform, and al-Assad says no. They are going to go cracking down on people, use even this weapon on civilians, as unarmed civilians. And I'm just wondering, Greg, what can African leaders learn from what has happened in Syria?
It's a very, very good, question there, because Africa is like the last frontier when it comes to human civilization right now, concerning meeting up to the 21st century standard of governance. Africa is lagging behind, and we have seen what's happened during the Arab Spring, which it succeeded in many of the Arab countries, but had a hitch in Syria. Irrespective of the fact that al-Assad had so much force to pressure the people into accepting his government, it didn't work out the way he planned it to be. In fact, he was chased away from home. He had been able to get asylum in a foreign country. This is, if we are to juxtapose what happened to Bashar al-Assad to what is happening in the continent of Africa, we think that it is a signal that autocratic, military-led governments and systems of government can never stand again if they are so antiquated and can never be. It has been regarded as a very, very antiquated way of governance, that there are other better models that can be adopted. No African leader should be allowed to stay in power as long as he wants. I mean, he should follow a constitution if there is one, and if there is no constitution, one should be formed by the congregation of the people to accept that this is the tenure of this the highest person in power. And also, institutions in Africa should be put in place to be able to checkmate the overbearing power of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the president of any country in Africa. And it should also signal that we should not take sides in Arab affairs, because they have their own affairs that drag on for so long. And sometimes we find ourselves maybe in this conflict between Israel and Hamas, Israel and Hezbollah. We've been finding a way to take sides between both parties, but I believe that we have so much in our plates that we should allow the Arabs to take care of their issues, while we as Africans handle Africans, and most importantly, Black, Negro Africans, the issues pertaining Black, Negro Africans and their survival in this present century. And also, I want also for us to take note of the fact that if Russia has a power play in Syria, it was not still able to save the Syrian government. Russia is right now in Chad. Russia is in Burkina Faso. Russia is in Niger. We should take note of Russian policy. They will leave their allies behind. They will leave their allies in defeat. So Russia does not have a sustainable policy when it comes to managing affairs of African governments. We can do it ourselves. We are capable, but let it be that it is all for one and one for all.
But what are the implications of these rebel forces' control for legitimacy and the authority of the Assad regime?
United States of America is a very big player in the politics of Syria, and they have air bases in Syria, which was even attacked by sometimes by Hezbollah and the Iranian regime. those foreign powers that have had losses in the territory of Syria, we have more say as at who will be in charge of the present apparatus of power there. So the United States is going to broker a lot of deals. I mean, Qatar is going to serve as a center stage for meetings between the leaders of these different opposition fighters to form a quorum on who will lead them in the coming days. And if that is not abided to, I mean, that's why it's regarded as a very risky situation. If it drops again, it's going to be another Libya at hand, and which nobody in the world wants that right now. I mean, the world is already visited with so much wars that is draining up very, very important resources that would have been used elsewhere. And we don't want another Syria turning into a Libyan quagmire. So I think for now, the United States, in conjunction with Israel and also with Western Europe, are going to be like they are going to midwife the current status of the government of Syria, without Russia having a say, definitely, and also China and North Korea have been knocked out of that theater of war. So for now, the Israel is going to make sure that Iran does not use Syria anymore, Iraq, and also Lebanon as proxies in their fight against the state of Israel. And any government that is going to emerge from Syria is still going to be able to work with Israel. If not, Israel is not going to stand down. That's my present prediction of what will be in the coming days, per se.
Do you think that the ouster of Assad would bring peace to the region? I mean, with what is going on, we've seen the Gaza, the Hezbollah against Israel, and now we've seen Syria being put in that turmoil. But do you think that for a broader peace to come to the Middle East, Assad needed to step aside?
Yes, Assad got his the premonition for his power basis because his father was one of those anti-Israel forces in the 50s and 60s that fought against Israel's the statehood of Israel, and that gave him popular support, and he rode on to power using the military. And they belong to a minority called the Alawites, so they are a minority in Syria per se, and don't have that kind of majority to be able to pull force, to be able to hold power. So another Alawite is not expected to come into power because the Alawites have been pushed aside with this present power equation. So it was a government that Syria was ruled by the force that Russia had to provide. Syria was not ruled by the people's mandate, and presently that's what they are all earning for, that the people have to have a say in who governs them. And Assad is not a symbol of democracy, he's not a symbol of even civilian rule in any way, and he will go to any extent to make sure that his regime will continue. He sees it as a beginning, it's a continuation of the political dynasty that his father started. And right now, the world is much more bigger than any political dynasty right now that cannot sustain itself through the power of the people. So Assad, if not now or later, he would have still been pushed aside because he is no longer an equation in the future of the Syrian people and also of Syrian politics. He cannot even contest for elections because his people do not bear the majority that will be needed to bring him back to power. He is only going to use through Russia to make sure that there will be continuous instability in Syria. If I can't have Syria, nobody else can have Syria kind of policy. That's why I think that it was very important, first of all, for Syria to have peace. Assad had to be gone. And Assad is presently in Moscow, and it will make it very difficult for he and his ethnic group or other power players that belong to his clique to be able to hold on to power in Syria. The opposition is going to form the new sovereign and popular government of Syria presently.
All right, Raymond Mbata, many thanks for your inputs and your insights. It's been really revealing and quite interesting. Many thanks for your time.
Good to have you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on your show.
All right, we're headed for a short break. When we get back, we'll get into something else that would interest you. Do stay with us.